this might be a good time to mention your friendship, your long-running friendship with Noam Chomsky, because one, I'm wondering how you think that this situation ought to be or will be, and maybe these are two different answers, resolved, but also how your views might relate to or differ from Noam's, just because I know that he has also been very vocal on this issue over the years.
I mean, first, we are different people. We come from different generations. Noam's a man who comes deeply out of the Jewish tradition. You know, he is very well schooled in Jewish history, in Jewish faith, and so on. He was raised in a household where these things were important. He has a direct link to European anti-Semitism. He knows what it did to parts of his family, and so on. When he was a young man, he went and lived in the very young Israel. You know, he lived in a kibbutz and so on. All of that marks his own understanding of how he sees Israel. But I must say, a couple of things. One, there is no daylight between Noam and I when it comes to a condemnation of the behavior of the Israeli state. There is no difference of opinion. Noam is a fierce critic of the oppression and of the occupation of the Palestinian people. And I don't think there's any daylight between us. There may be some tactical differences, but that doesn't matter. You know, Noam may be uncomfortable with certain language like boycott. That's because of his own history. You know, maybe discomfort with some of the language. But there is no daylight in his commitment to seeing the people, both peoples, have a just solution in this. Okay? And I also agree with that. I don't have a disagreement. I don't think there is going to be a situation ever where there's going to be a mass exodus of Israeli citizens out of the region. That's crazy. Nobody is even talking about it. It's a complete misunderstanding of the slogan, from the river to the sea. Let me explain that a little bit. You see, what it refers to is the Jordan River, which is the barrier between Israel, the West Bank, Jerusalem, and Jordan. The Jordan River runs effectively from Syria, from the border with Syria, all the way down to the Dead Sea. And the sea, which is the Mediterranean, that defines this region in a way. Over the course of the period from 1948, one Israeli government after the other has tried to raise the costs of living between the river and the sea, tried to adversely lift the cost of living there for Palestinians, made it harder and harder. Right from 1948, you know, Elias Khoury says that there wasn't just one Nakba in 1948, there's a permanent Nakba. Constant attempt to get people to leave. And we've seen that. There's policy, you know, there's statements. When Ariel Sharon was the Minister of Agriculture, he put in place the settlement policy to effectively raise the price of living in the West Bank and so on. Okay? So we know that there is an idea within Israeli ruling circles to either expel Palestinians from this territory, from the river to the sea, and build a singularly Jewish state, or if Palestinians remain, they have to remain as subordinate. That's why international bodies consider it an apartheid situation. Okay, so from the river to the sea is actually official Israeli ruling class policy. That's not a fantasy. That's the policy. You know, Greater Israel. That's the policy. It's there in the Likud statements. It's there now when government officials talk about the Gaza Nakba or the second Nakba. That's what they're saying. From the river to the sea, this will be a Jewish state. So that's one view of the Jewish, state from the perspective of this ruling class inside Israel, including Benjamin Netanyahu, but not exclusively his vision. It's widely shared by lots of people, including by Mr. Gallant, who claims to be his opponent and is sitting now in the war cabinet. Yoav Gallant, the defense minister. Okay. And Benny Gantz as well, the guy who's come into the war cabinet as the opposition, also shares this sort of opinion. From the river to the sea, we'll build some kind of Jewish state. Okay. Now, that's one vision. That's a vision which is annihilationist. Get rid of the Palestinians. When Palestinians now use that slogan, what they mean, I feel, is from the river to the sea, let us create a place of equal rights, where Israelis and Palestinians can create this is the one-state solution, but not a one state which is a Jewish state, but a one state which is a democratic, secular state. That's another vision. Now, I can't and you can't establish what should be the victor in this. Marx writes in Capital, when two equal rights contest, force prevails, Marx writes, And here there is a strong belief amongst the Jewish ruling circles in Israel that they must build a Jewish state. They see themselves as a Jewish ruling circle, not an Israeli ruling circle, that a Jewish state must be built. That's one right. It's a right. They see that as their right, given by God or whatever. That's a right. And the other is suggesting, no, we need a secular democratic project, partly because the two-state solution has been vitiated by the settlement policy, the walls, the Gaza expulsions, and so on. You can't really have it. Where are you going to build the two-state? Okay, two-state solution had as one of its axioms building a transportation network between Gaza and the West Bank, and that people in both sides could freely move to each other. This was never put in place. The day after Oslo was signed, this was set aside. So the two-state solution never really been taken seriously. You're going to end up with some kind of one-state solution, okay? That's what's going to happen. Either it's an exclusionist, apartheid Jewish state, or it's going to be a secular democratic state where everybody has equal rights. This second one is going to be very hard to put into play. And the reason it's going to be hard to put into play is that there is this doubleness inside the Israel project, which is that, Ben Gurion and others didn't want to establish a Jewish state. They wanted to create this sort of non-Jewish state, but keep the Jewish state thing going. This form of, let's call it duplicity, maybe, or lack of, trying to shut the door on this conversation. Whatever your opinion on it, they didn't decide one way or the other. But increasingly, at least since the 1970s, the opinion has grown that it should be a Jewish state, that if you allow Palestinians full rights, this is going to dilute the Jewish character of the state. And that is seen by certain people in Israel as itself a kind of annihilation. So now you have two annihilationist problems to deal with, right? And this is going to be hard. So we can't solve this. You can't create a philosophical solution to a real problem like this, but we can see all the paths logically forward. The annihilationist approach of building a Jewish state is terrible because this is going to mean really, millions of people displaced. And it's going to put off, but not suspend, the struggle of the Palestinians for emancipation. It's not going to end it. You're going to move 2 million people from Gaza into Sinai. They are going to continue to contest, want their land back and so on. It's not going to end anything. So really building a Jewish state is not a final protection unless you kill millions of Palestinians. On the other side, building a one state, which is secular and democratic, is going to worry certain people saying, well, what about the Jewish character of the state? Now, we may need to have a discussion saying, do you need to establish a religious character to a modern state? This is a good question. It's a question we should ask Saudi Arabia. It's a question we should ask other countries that have a religious character to the state. Personally, I don't believe that modern states should have a religious character. I think that they should have protections for people to, worship and so on, but the state shouldn't have a religious character. The morality of a state has to be founded through the practice of citizenship, not through ancient texts. But that's a big debate and dispute. Look at the United States going directly in the opposite direction. Maybe within the next 4 years, some president is going to establish that there's a state religion in the United States and it's Southern Baptist, faith or whatever. That you could practice other things, but Southern Baptists are given special privileges. It's already moving in that direction. I don't like this direction. So I would hope that in a place like Palestine, this doesn't become the way forward. And by the way, it only exacerbates differences. When religion is put on as the marker and you say this is a Jewish state, it's going to create an Islamic backlash to it, which is not a secular democratic protest for liberation. And that's exactly what happened with the creation of Hamas in 1987. Hamas mirrored the rise of Likud from 1977. These two formations mirror each other. And it's not good for the region, in fact. This tendency to move towards a more eschatological politics rather than a politics of secular democracy.